Do you know that deep in the frozen heart of Russia, there lies a doll that never stops smiling, its porcelain face cracked by time, yet its grin untouched by decay? And those who stare too long into his empty eyes claim to hear faint whispers calling their names, as if the doll itself remembers every soul who dares to gaze upon it. The doll was first discovered by a lonely antique collector named Victor, who stumbled upon it in the ruins of an abandoned orphanage buried under snow near Siberia. And though its smile made his spine shiver, he felt drawn to it as though it whispered his fate through the frozen air. Villagers spoke of the orphanage as cursed, once home to dozens of children who vanished after a mysterious fire. And when rescuers came days later, all they found was the doll, untouched and pristine, sitting perfectly still among ashes that still smoked in the wind. At night, Victor claimed he could hear faint giggles echoing through his cabin, like children playing outside in the snow. But when he looked through the frosted window, all he saw was a pale figure standing still, holding a doll that looked exactly like the one beside his bed. He took photographs of the doll each morning, hoping to prove to himself that nothing had changed. Yet every picture showed something different, the mouth stretching wider, the pupils growing darker. And by the fifth day, the smile had become something inhuman, almost hungry. In desperation, Victor wrote a trembling letter to a paranormal researcher in Moscow, begging her to come, describing how the doll whispered children's names in his dreams and how he could no longer sleep without feeling tiny hands crawling across his chest. When Dr. Ekaterina arrived, she found the cabin door open, snow drifting inside, and Victor's boots frozen to the floor, but no trace of him, only the doll sitting upright on his desk, its smile perfect, its porcelain hand pointing toward a diary filled with incoherent scribbles. The diary told of nightmares filled with fire, laughter, and faces melting into porcelain, with every page ending the same way. "It smiles when I breathe." The final entry was written in blood, the words barely legible beneath the stain of fear. Katerina set up hidden cameras around the room, determined to capture evidence of paranormal activity. But when she reviewed the footage, her hands trembled. The doll was moving ever so slightly, turning its head toward the camera, and smiling wider each hour. At 3:11 a.m., she woke to hear footsteps and laughter, tiny overlapping voices echoing from the walls, and in the camera feed, she saw faint shapes of children surrounding the doll, their faces blurred, their laughter growing sharper with every second. When she froze a frame of the video, her blood turned cold. Every child in that image had the same twisted smile as the doll, their porcelain skin cracked, their hollow eyes staring directly at her, as if begging to be seen. To prove it was only her imagination, Katerina placed the doll before a mirror, but at midnight, the reflection smiled before the real doll did, and its eyes blinked twice, even though porcelain should never move. The wind outside began to sound like whispers chanting her name, Katerina, Katerina, and every time she looked at the doll, she swore the corners of his mouth lifted higher, as if feeding on her fear. She found Victor's old tape recorder, playing a voice not his own, high-pitched, childlike, and repeating the phrase, "She smiles when you look away." When she turned off the recorder, the voice whispered one more time, even without power. After weeks of research, she uncovered the truth. The doll had been handmade by a woman named Anya, a caretaker who lost her daughter in the fire and tried to capture her spirit inside the doll. But something else answered instead. Anya performed forbidden rituals using glass shards from her daughter's coffin, mixing blood into the porcelain paste, and the night she finished, neighbors heard her scream and then silent. Only the doll remained, smiling in her place. Every owner of the doll had vanished, each found later with a smile carved across their face, frozen in terror, as if mimicking the doll's eternal expression. Katerina realized the doll's eyes follow her every move. When she covered them, she heard scratching beneath the fabric, as if something inside wanted to see her again. That night, she woke to a soft humming, the same lullaby recorded in Victor's diary, a tune that ended with a whisper, "Smile for me." The next morning, her camera showed her sleepwalking, gently rocking the doll in her arms like a child, whispering in Russian, "Don't cry, little one," though she remembered none of it. The next evening, every mirror in the cabin, shattered at once, as though struck by invisible hands. And in each fragment, Katerina saw not her reflection, but the face of a smiling child, eyes black as coal, teeth like porcelain splinters, whispering in perfect unison, "Smile with us." When she stepped outside, she saw small footprints leading into the forest, tiny barefoot impressions glowing faintly red against the white snow. And when she followed them, the air grew heavy, her breath turned black, and she found the broken doll arm buried beneath the ice. That night, the whispers became singing soft, haunting lullabies echoing through the storm, layered with the laughter of unseen children, forming a ghostly choir that grew louder every time she tried to cover her ears. Katerina woke to find another doll beside the first, identical in every detail, but with one difference. This one's eyes were open wide, glistening like real human eyes, and when she blinked, she swore it blinked back. While recording her notes, she felt a cold, fragile hand brush her wrist. When she looked down, the doll's arm was slightly lifted, as if it had just touched her, and faint frostbite marks appeared where porcelain met skin. Her camera caught something unspeakable, a shadow crawling up the wall behind her, taking shape of a child laughing silently, its mouth opening wider and wider until it split the darkness itself. She dreamed she was a child again, playing in the orphanage halls, holding the doll's hand, until she looked down and realized it wasn't a doll, it was her reflection, smiling up from the floor, whispering, "You belong here." Katerina woke screaming, and there before her stood a pale woman in a burned dress. Anya, the doll maker, her eyes hollow, her mouth stitched shut, yet her voice filled the room, whispering through the doll, "You open the door." Suddenly, the fireplace ignited by itself, flames forming the outline of children's faces, crying and smiling at once, and Katerina's shadow stretched unnaturally long across the floor, bending toward the doll, as if pulled by invisible strings. From the corner of the room, the doll began to whisper names, dozens of them, all of the missing children from the orphanage, until it finally said hers, Katerina, with a voice that sounded both like a child and her own. When she ran outside, the snow beneath her feet was no longer white. It bled color with every step, as if the ground itself remembered every soul taken by the doll's curse to smile. She slipped and fell against a frozen lake, only to see faces trapped beneath the ice, thousands of children staring upward, their mouths frozen in that same horrific smile, hands pressed as if begging to escape. Determined to end it, Katerina recreated Anya's forbidden ritual. Surrounding the doll was mirrors and candles, chanting in trembling voice, but every reflection began to laugh in a different tone, mocking her words as wax melted like tears. Every candle died at once, plunging her into darkness. Then, one by one, the doll's eyes began to glow faintly blue, illuminating dozens of smiling faces behind her. Voices filled the air. "Play with us, Katerina." The walls bled frost, forming tiny handprints that crawled upward, and the doll's hands turning perfect synchronization toward her. The mirrors exploded, igniting spontaneous flames that swirled into a tornado of heat and snow. And through the smoke, Anya's spirit rose, smiling with burnt lips. "You shouldn't have tried to save them." The doll levitated, spinning slowly as invisible threads of hair wrapped around Katerina's wrists, pulling her closer. Her reflection in the shattered mirror began to smile the same porcelain grin she feared most. The storm outside turned red as fire burst through the windows, consuming the cabin. Yet amid the smoke she stood motionless, smiling peacefully, half human, half porcelain eyes glowing faint blue like the doll's. When the fire finally died, all that remained was silence, snow falling gently over charred wood, and in the middle of the ruins sat the doll, untouched, smiling, holding a small log of black hair in his perfect porcelain hand. Weeks later, hikers found the remains of the cabin buried in snow. Everything was frozen solid except the doll, sitting perfectly upright, its grin wide and alive. And when one hiker took a photo, the doll's smile changed slightly, revealing teeth.